Chapter 2. Lycell strolled into the dining room of his newly renovated ranch house with a smile on his face. He stretched, raised his arms out and then above his head, and placed his hands together, his thick muscled arms like two small boulders. He drew in a breath and said, "I'm feeling great today. Nothing can make me angry." Drayton glanced up at him and rolled his eyes. He knew Lycell to be a short fuse that could go off any moment if he didn't get his way, and lately he wasn't, at least not with Adrienne and his sons. Lycell watched Drayton sitting silent and enjoying his venison before it was time to ride around the ranch, checking for intruders or shifters who had gotten drunk, and decided to sleep it off in the wooded area that surrounded the ranch. Not getting a comment from Drayton, Lycell sat down across from him at the large dining table that had held 10 at one time, and more if the entire family dined together, as Adrienne had hoped for one day. "Where is Adrienne? I want to drive her into town and buy her something expensive." He raised his arms to his sides, stretching them, and flexed his large muscles, straining the arms of his flannel red and black shirt. "I'm going to take her for a ride to Lake Tahoe. We'll stay for dinner and a show. She would like that." Drayton's eyes rose from his plate. He chewed on another bloody piece of meat, drank a glass of water, and then sucked in the fresh air coming in from the open windows. It was fall now. He looked out and saw the oak trees his mother had planted years ago turning yellow and orange, and a few single leaves falling from the trees and blowing into the pool. It was the different pine trees he enjoyed watching which signaled the forest with wild animals, and plenty of fresh food year-round. His eyes settled down on the pool. The pool hadn't been used since Thorn had fallen into it and almost drowned. Werewolves knew how to swim naturally, but Thorn had been afraid of water, and although he could swim, he had never relished the experience. "Imagine that," Lycell had said, surprised. He never knew that Thorn was a sinker, and because of that, Thorn was always skittish about getting into the water. Eventually, he overcame his fear because Lycell would drop him in and tell him, "Swim or die." "We have a lot to do before the snow comes," Drayton said, turning to Lycell. "I have to clean the pool. All those leaves are blowing into it. Your boys aren't here to do any of the chores this large place requires, and hiring strangers is out of the question," Drayton said, glancing up at Lycell. Lycell waited patiently for an answer to his question. "When the fuck are you going to tell me where Adrienne is?" It didn't take long for that short fuse to ignite. "I told you a few days ago, but you weren't listening. I said I would bring her to Wilder at the cave." He looked at Lycell with a raised eyebrow. Drayton possessed an even temperament, and he wasn't intimidated by Lycell. "Why the fuck did you do that?" "Because of you. You have been manipulating us to be with Adrienne. First, you find all kinds of lame excuses not to go with Wilder to any of the council meetings, and then you try to send me, knowing I want to take care of my son and teach him important skills a werewolf needs to know. You spent time with your sons and you have 6. And you have only 1 and he's still a pup, and that's why we hire nurses for that, and Adrienne. How can she attend to my son and be with any of us when you're occupying her with your needs? There is only 1 of her, and she can't spread herself that thin. It leaves nothing for the rest of us. We love her as much as you do, and she's my wife. Who gave you the right to take her to the cave? It could snow and she could be away for a while," Lycell said, rising and looking down at Drayton. "The right of a lawful husband," Drayton said, his tone aggressive, his eyes glaring up at Lycell. "We don't recognize man's laws here. We are subject to our own." Drayton locked eyes with Lycell. He had always been the selfish triplet of the pack. "Maybe you're satisfied with that 1 son of yours, but my sons are yearlings, and I need to mate with Adrienne. And so does Wilder. I have a right since you brought that up. My right is legal. I'm her husband. What you say or think doesn't count. It's not for you to say." It's for Adrienne to say. And right now she recognizes me, and she recognizes werewolves' laws, and that's asking a lot of her. Werewolves don't recognize a piece of paper. But humans do, and Adrienne is a human. She made her choice. She could have chosen you, and now I know why she didn't. She could have chosen Wilder, but he's too moody and doesn't express his feelings much, and he spends all his time worrying about all of us. I'm going to the cave to get her, Lycell declared, walking away. Do you really want to do that? Lycell stopped in his tracks. Do you want to risk a war within our own pack? Our own family? I knew you were reckless and selfish, but I didn't know just how much until now, Drayton said, his voice edgy. Drayton glanced up at Lycell with both eyebrows raised and an irritable look on his face. He had been up all night with his son and hunted this morning for a fresh supply of meat, and he didn't feel like reasoning with Lycell. Lycell knew Adrienne belonged to Wilder first, and that Wilder had chosen to share her with them for the good of the pack. Lycell turned, looking at Drayton, and said, I guess I can allow him and Adrienne time together, he said to save face. No, he didn't want to fight Wilder. Adrienne would never forgive him, and he might lose her altogether. Instead of rushing out to bring Adrienne back, he would cool off and give her some time with Wilder. But if they stayed away too long, he would go to the cave and express his displeasure with them. Before he took his horses out to pasture, he called Thorn. Where are you? I thought you would be back by now. And where is Damon? I don't know about Damon, but I know Tracker is on his way to Mexico, Father. Does he still have that female with him? No. Thorn answered quickly, but with a weak sound to his voice, and Lycell, knowing Thorn and the tone of his voice, felt that there was more to his answer. Then that's good. For once he's thinking. Thorn hesitated and then said, She's with me. She's my mate now. For the love of God. He could hear his mother's voice coming back to haunt him. That's what she had said when she'd entered her flower shed and caught Lycell, with two women in her daybed naked, with him lying in between them. If Lycell's mother had come a half an hour earlier, she would have caught her son sucking one female shifter's breasts, while the other female shifter had his cock in her mouth. Do you know what you're saying and doing, Thorn? What the fuck has got into you? You have a war female here that's looking to marry you, and now you and Tracker have managed to fuck that up and disappointed me and your mother. Mother will understand. After all, she is a human too. She knows you have to follow your heart. She may understand, and I may understand eventually, but Wilder is head alpha in this family and this pack, and he will never understand you putting a female ahead of all we believe in, and what we're trying to do to make sure that werewolves are strong and flourish in these trying times. I'm an alpha too, but Wilder is still over all of us, because he's the firstborn, just like Tracker is over you. Did he sanction you taking his female? Lycell said, the tone of his voice abrasive, rough and hard. He gave her to me. Just as I thought. You are as much of a fool as he is. Both of you are insane, and a great disappointment to me. I know Damon isn't as irrational, like the two of you. He's my only hope. Lycell's tone was filled with frustration and dissatisfaction. He let out a sigh and shook his head. His last words to Thorn were, "What the fuck?" And he slammed the phone down, then flung it across the room, striking one of Adrienne's new favorite blue and white vases filled with flowers, which hit the hardwood flooring and broke, spilling water and flowers everywhere. He raised his head, let out a loud breath, and then crouched to pick up the mess, and to hide the broken vase before Adrienne came home. Thorn looked over to Zoey and smiled. Father wished he could be as free as we are, he whispered, looking down at her, and Zoey opened her eyes. She reached for his hand. If he knew you, he would love you as much as I do. Come get in bed. We have all day, Zoey said, her body a clear distraction to Thorn. Just as Tracker knew, she could and would distract Thorn into carelessness. Zoey gazed out the glass patio doors, at the waves washing up. Normally, she caught a glimpse of Tracker swimming out in the ocean, but he wasn't there, and it was 9 o'clock on a beautiful, bright, sunny morning. The ocean looked warm, but it had to be cooler now. She felt this, because of the cool breeze coming in through the open doors. When they first arrived at the hotel, she took a swim and made love to Thorn shortly afterwards. She knew Thorn didn't care too much for swimming, although he would if she insisted, but she loved a morning swim, then they would climb into bed and start all over again. Somewhere in there he would remember to eat, and she would call room service. Thorn had been used to waking up early to tend to horses, and feeding the large dogs in their kennels, and the ones that were allowed to patrol the ranch. He would cut down trees and bring in wood, and place it in a shed for the coming winter months. Everyone had a job, and that was his until now. Now he would lie around and make love to Zoey, and she would with him, and that was all he cared to do lately. Looking down at Zoey, and enjoying a respite from the drudgery of work and hunting animals, Thorn had fallen into the life of a man who had disposable income, money to burn, and he would burn as much as possible, just to lie between Zoey's beautiful hard thighs, happy, because Thorn thought about Zoey's happiness more than his own. "Tracker left while you were asleep," he said, touching her face. She sat up in bed, placing a pillow behind her on the headboard, and then Thorn sat near her. She looked at him with a curious stare. "Why did he leave? Not because of me, I hope." Her soft words came tumbling out. "Was he angry at me?" She put her hands together and turned them, as if her actions were a nervous twitch. "Of course not." Thorn passed his hand across her forehead, pushing away her hair that had grown a little longer. He leaned and kissed her on her lips. She put her small hand to his chest and pushed it. Thorn fell back, pretending she had strength in her arm. He fell back, pulling Zoey over him, so she was looking down on him. "You're my beautiful human, and I will cherish you always. Promise me. I can't go back to the life I had. You have shown me how I should be treated. I love you, Thorn." A feeling of completeness surged through Thorn. He wanted this feeling all his life, because his mother had promised him that true love would come to him one day. And she was right, because here it is, and it feels splendid, he thought. And he never wanted to be without it. "I will always treat you this way. I will protect you and love you." Zoey smiled wide and eased down on his body. She kissed the muscles in his chest as Thorn lay back with his arms crossed over his head. His eyes fell on her, and he looked at her flawless back and behind as she slid down the length of his body, trailing kisses until she reached his groin. "What do you want this morning, my hungry wolf?" Her blue eyes sparkled as she gazed up at him. She heard his heart drumming in his chest circle her lips, making his body quake under her touch, ready to drain him of his strength. He lifted his hips in anticipation of her next move. Zoey looked up at Thorn as she down her throat and smiled. He didn't expect her to answer, but she knew. She'd had a lot of practice with Bo and his friends, and Thorn barely had any, if you counted the teacher behind the cafeteria, and the females that he was about to fuck when the lion shifters broke in, and he and Damon had to kill them. He had many experiences in killing things, but not making love. But Zoey would teach him, and he would be a good pupil. Zoey should have been the protected one because she was a female, but Thorn had been more protected as a male, simply because of his father, Lycell, who had been wild and out of control as a pup and yearling, was afraid his boys would inherit his reckless nature and run wild and cause problems in Samseville because of what and who they were, and because they had oversized penises. As Thorn looked down at Zoey, he marveled at how this. She pulled up, passed her hand over her mouth, looked into his eyes and said, "Do whatever you want. I want you to feel free with me. I enjoy making love to you." That was what Thorn had lived for all his life, to have a female that enjoyed sex as much as he did, and one that was free to express it with him. sliding down between his legs, pulled his hard thighs tight with both hands as his hips thrust forward, and then relaxed. She heard him exhale, and his body calmed. It had been nothing to Zoey. She had done this many times before, but hated each time she had done this with Bo. Because Bo enjoyed this so much, he forgot he wasn't having sexual intercourse with Zoey. She could bring him to orgasm quickly, and she had become proficient at this. That was why Bo thought she couldn't have any children. The truth was, when Zoey found out the kind of man she was saddled with, she didn't want to have any children, so she chose the times she would have intercourse with him. But now she wanted to have babies with Thorn, but because of Bo allowing his friends to have her, she wasn't at all sure she could. She hoped Thorn liked her enough where he could overlook the possibilities that she wasn't fertile.